Nous sommes au Festival America en compagnie de Sam Lipsyte. We like to talk especially about the ask, and we seldom read about the failures of a young father in general literature. Why do you think we avoid talking about them?
Well, it's uncomfortable, it's sad, but I think that what I was trying to say was that we all feel like failures. We all compare ourselves to other people. We all worry that we're not doing enough as parents, as people in society, and but a lot of that is bluster, is bluff, is not, is just kind of a collective lie, and that if we were more honest about our failures, perhaps life could be a little better.
Do you sometimes feel like your character does?
Yes, I think one tends to distort or exaggerate in art to make it work as literature in this example. But when the book came out and people said, "Oh, he's a loser. It's a story about a loser, and this is the life of a loser," I looked around and said, "Well, this is really how life is for me and all of my friends, and then millions of other people, I think, as well." And so I did not respond well to that. I thought that was kind of a misreading of the book. I think the point is that society sets all of us up to be losers in a certain way, so that a very few people can be the winners. And so I think that I was maybe pointing towards that in the book.
That's because actually, yes, Milo Burke is very aware of the world he lives in. He's quite illusionless, but at the same time, he fails all the time. And what is this switch, do you think? How can we be so conscious of the reality of the world and at the same time fail at almost everything?
Well, I don't see it as a contradiction. In fact, I think often I find that the very successful people are just dumb enough and don't really see the world for what it is. And so in their illusion, everything is possible and things work out for them. But if you look long enough, if you analyze things, if you really take measure of the world we live in, it's hard to build the confidence to do all the things society says we should be doing and live the way society says we should live. And so I think it's a struggle for everyone.
And of every day also, I
Yes,
guess.
yeah.
In your book, you kind of criticize, but with lots of humor, especially these people who do everything perfectly, who raise up their child with special schools, who eat organic, all of this. Do you think this kind of sense of performance of all these people doing good things and right things can put pressure on more normal people like Milo and actually contribute to their low self-esteem or ruin their plans?
Well, if I understand that correctly, I mean, I think we all, we try to give our children good food, and we want them to be, safe, and we want them to learn, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. And yes, it's better to give your child organic food than it is to give them something that just came out of a factory somewhere. But it's the fact that you have to do everything perfectly. I think so that's what you were saying.
Yeah.
That causes all of this discord and causes all of this shame. And I think that's a big part of it, is that people are meant to feel ashamed when they're really just trying. And, sometimes you do a lot of things right, but you can't do everything right. And you can't afford to do everything right, which is really, when I'm making fun of those people who do everything right, I'm more pointing out with humor, I hope, the fact that they're able to do everything right because they have the money or the resources to do that. And so we'd all like to do that. We'd all like to raise our children in a perfect way, but if there is such a thing. But we, as I said before, we try, and society gives a certain message that makes us feel like we're failing, and we, of course, turn against ourselves and feel that we are failing. And I think that's a dangerous place to be. And And it leads to a dangerous kind of politics, and it leads to a dangerous philosophy of life.
Yes, things get linked one to each other and form a kind of weird chain of things.
Absolutely.
And do you think your anti-hero, especially here, Milo, embodies a kind of failure of masculinity as it's shown and glorified in especially the American dream, the perfect man doing everything? Do you think it's kind of a kind of failure of this image that we are watching?
Well, I think we're seeing men able to maybe face the fact that they don't have to live up to that ideal. I think that society's, it sets up women in a bad way, and it also sets up men in a bad way. And I think that a lot of men and women of younger generations are realizing that, and roles are changing for good reason. And so, I would like to see a failure of that old idea of masculinity. But there's also, and maybe this is more American, but you're raised with that notion of what it is to be a man, and it is to be strong, and it is to, you beat up the bully, and you make the money, and you
Kill Indians and get gold.
Yeah, yeah. And you build a bigger house than the guy next to you, and that's been a road to ruin for, the land, for the people who were first here, as you say. And yeah, I think my book does address that, and the idea of this kind of, some people would call it emasculation. I don't think it has to be that. It's not really an emasculation, it's more of a liberation. But I think there are people who still want to see, even though they may seem very progressive, and they still want to see those structures in place because they make them feel safe. And that's something that I think the book is, in a comic way, trying to.
Yeah, there is a lot of humor in your book. It's at the same time quite tragical and at the same time very funny. Do you think, for you, maybe in your style, humor can be even the dark one, a way to show how harsh reality can be?
Yeah, I mean, for me, in my writing, it's necessary, and I don't. There are exceptions, but generally I don't trust a book that isn't funny on some level. That doesn't. I say, because laughter and being able to joke about existence a little bit is part of all our lives, and it's what gets us through hard times, even if it's just to laugh with our friends about something, or to analyze the situation and be able to say, yes, it's awful, it's terrible, but it's kind of funny. And if you can do that, you can survive a lot, and a lot of bad things. So if a book, a novel, is supposed to not only represent life, but be life, which I think it must be. A book itself must be life on the page. If there's no humor at all, that's a huge part of our conscious life and unconscious life that's gone, that's not in there. And so then that's a different kind of book, and not necessarily one I want to read.
And not to write.
I mean, I think there are wonderful books that are just dark, that don't have no comedy in them at all. But then I admire them for doing that, but they don't have everything. They don't have.
You think there is a kind of unity between darkness and humor and?
Well, I don't think things are funny unless they're very dark. Like, I find most of the things that are kind of given in the mainstream culture, say, as funny, I find them maybe too lighthearted, and I'm only, the things that make me laugh are the dark, deep things, and they also make me sad. And I think that as humans we feel both.
Yes.
And so that's the kind of art that I respond to.
And how did you realize and decided one day to write and to transcript the way you could see the world and social interactions? How do you say, okay, I'm going to take a paper and a pencil, I'm going to write stories?
Yeah, it really happened. I fell in love with language. I fell in love with making sentences. I fell in love with prose, and mostly it came from reading people, and then thinking, well, this thing did something to me. I would read a book and say, this did something to me. And how could this bundle of pages do something to me? That's not just emotional, physical. I would respond in a very visceral way. And so a part of me said, I'd like to try that. I'd like to see if I could create an effect like that in another person, and with words. And so I think that's what started it. And then I always find I write, and then the story comes. I just begin writing, and stories and characters, situations, they emerge, but they don't emerge from nowhere. I realize that's what I was thinking about all along, but I didn't know it beforehand. I have to start writing to find out what I'm writing.
What are you writing at the moment?
I'm writing a novel, another novel.
Another novel, still with this kind of half funny, half dark people.
Yeah, I think in tone it is similar to The Ask. It's like a very different story.
And to finish, what are you reading at the moment? Is there a book you would recommend?
The last book I read was a very good book by a young American author named Annie DeWitt. And it's called White Nights in Split Town City. And maybe you will all hear of it someday.